Hi, this is Enthusiastic Steve, and today's video is about a Homebase CB radio which was available here in the UK in the early mid 1980s. It's one of these radios, you love it or you hate it. Now, back in the early 80s, 1981 to be precise, when the UK government got round to legalising UK CB, up to then we were basically everybody was importing illegal CBs, mainly from America, and the influence that the films like Convoy and Smokey and the Bandit and a few other films had. Up till then we were using like imported home-based radios and mobile units, but when it became UKFM, a lot of the companies jumped in on the bandwagon and started producing home-based CBs. Here's an example of some of those radios which we could buy back in the early 80s. This one's a President Dwight D Homebase AM radio with a digital clock and a modulation meter and power and SWR. The President Washington. This is an AM and sideband transceiver. Came in many guises. Later it was available on UKFM. The legendary Excalibur radios, made by various companies, but a great looking solid transceiver. After 1981, the suppliers in the UK started producing these radios. The Jensen, the sought after Murphy 1500 Homebase, complete with its clunky squelch and transformer hum. Famous for it. At the higher end of the market, the Midland Homebase 900. These were going for over £300, and I think most of the costs went into the aluminium knobs. Very nice indeed. So this brings us nicely on to the radio we'll be looking at today. Now these radios came in, again, different brand names. Grandstand, Wagner and Atron. Here is the Grandstand version. It's a straight 40 channel UK FM radio. Big, black and boxy with a huge dial, a clarifier. Even though it was just UK FM, this was really just a delta tune. Now, I've always had a liking for the this type of radio, this home-based unit, especially the Grandstand one when it was available here in the UK. And it appeared in a CB magazine at the time, and I cut the picture out, and I've still got that photo on my wall now. This is it in a glass frame. They also made other radios, the Gemini, the Hawk, and the Bluebird. Unfortunately, when these were new, they were quite rare, quite hard to get hold of, and I could never afford one. They were over £220, £230 at the time, though the prices did come down a few years later. Like I say, Grandstand made a few radios. The Grandstand Gemini was a mobile unit, quite substantial in its size. They also made the Bluebird, because it's called the Bluebird because the case was a metal blue, which was very nice indeed. And they also later partnered it with a transverter, and this went on to become a 934 megs CB, which was legal in this country for a few years. Unfortunately, due to the price of the equipment and availability, it never really caught on, though there were a few purists who loved it. So let's return to the Grandstand Homebase radio. Now, go on, tell me, what is there not to love about this radio? Well, I'll tell you one of the big things. Well, the radio itself, the innards, were made by a company called Saruga. They were a Japanese company. They went on to make some very good navigation equipment, which of course gets used in very harsh conditions. I just hope they made them better than they did these radios. The big problem was internally. Now, they used a double-sided printed circuit board, but they never plated it through. All the links were wire links from the top of the board to the bottom. Over age, they dry out, you get dry joints, they delaminate, and the wire links become detached. Right, this picture shows the Grandstand Gemini, the internals. I'm showing you this because these are the same components, the same board as actually inside a Grandstand Homebase. The large metal box at the bottom, a tin can, contains the IF and VCO, and they're all sealed with a large amount of wax. Very difficult to get into and to work on. Now, unfortunately, one of the common components that fails on this radio is the audio chip. Without the audio chip, you won't get no TX and no receive. Now, if you're really lucky, you might be able to source an original NEC replacement, or otherwise have to obtain a Chinese copy. But the problem is, on the board, when you try to desolder these, the board just disintegrates in front of your very eyes. It delaminates. Unless you really are an expert solderer, and you can actually run wires along the tracks to the net solder joint from each connection carefully without doing more damage, then this is not a job for the light-hearted. So moving on, I'd first like to say a very, very big thank you to Lee and his father, if you're out there. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the ability to purchase this, a Wagner Homebase. This is the straight UKFM version, 40 channels. Some of you may be lucky enough to own the sideband variant that Wagner made. What I love about these radios, or one thing I love about these radios, is all the knobs and controls. It's one of those you can have on your desk, your bench, and just adjust and play with. RF gain, squelch, SWR, a tone control and volume. Got two big meters there, a signal power and SWR. In the centre, as I've mentioned earlier, you've got that large clarifier. It's got a lovely feel to it, but it's just a delta tune. On the other end of the radio, you've got a PA switch, a CB, a noise blanker that actually works, high and low power, that's 0.4 watts or 4 watts. Over in the UK, we used to have to run a Homebase antenna at only 0.4 of a watt. You've got SWR forward, you've got dimmer switch there, sleeper, timer, time adjustment, and it also has a on-off switch and auto. Now the auto basically just allows you to put the sleep mode on, and the radio will turn on at a set time. A relay on the internal power supply allows you to leave the radio powered up with the radio itself part turned off, so the clock just displays. The clock has a nice red LED glow to it, as does the channel display. Channel display looks like it's down a little bit lower, but when it's on a bench and you're viewing it from just slightly above, the numbers are exactly inside the box, right dead square. The clarifier takes centre stage right in the centre there, and even though it's just a delta tune, I tell you what, it's got some great engineering to it. It's got a lovely smooth feel. Again, I just want to say thank you very much again to Lee and his father who allowed me to purchase this radio. It's been very well looked after. It's a beautiful radio. It's over 40 years old. All fully works, absolutely everything, not even a bulb gone on it. My old grandstand I'm going to have to try and repair, or might even use it as a long-term project, use it as a donor box and fit another radio internally. Here we go, I've got the radio on the bench now. I've just plugged it in to give it a quick on-air test. Unfortunately, the bands are very quiet today. There's a lot of solar activity, which means there's just nothing on 27 megs at all this afternoon. But this radio has been very well looked after. It's over 40 years old. Yeah, look at it. Look at this, 40 years old. I mean, I didn't look as good as this at 40 years old. That's a few years back now. But a beautiful radio. Now, normally I would open them up and I would adjust the deviation, I'd adjust the power settings, adjust the frequency. But to be honest, this is so close to being on frequency, especially as it's 40 years old. It's still well within parameters. The deviation is a little bit on the low side, but the audio, as you'll hear in a minute, is still fairly loud and clear. So I'm not even going to bother checking that, adjusting that. And it's already putting out 3.6 watts on the meter. So it's just a tad under 4, and probably I would only get another 0.1 or 2 watts out of it. So I'm going to leave this absolutely as she is. A lovely, lovely radio. The Wagner Homebase 40 channel UK FM radio. Do you love it? Do you hate it? And this is a little bit of test modulation using my malachite. 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 5 4 3 2 1. Test over. So there you go. The grandstand, the Wagner Homebase 40 channel UK FM radio. A beautiful home base. I'm going to give it a good home I'll give it a lot of time on air as well. I do like to use all these radios I've got behind my nostalgia corner, as I call it. I do like to use them all. I'll go on the local nets and talk to the locals, and been using it on a lot of Inter-G recently, as some of the skips been coming in from across Europe. So yeah, thumbs up. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for viewing. Please consider subscribing if you've not done so before. I will be doing some, say, more amateur radio videos very soon again. I've got some other equipment to try out and test on air. But this one came along and I thought, well, you know, I must do and share this with you. This is a beautiful, beautiful radio. Nice in anybody's collection. So if you've got one of these at home, let us know. If you've got the Wagner Homebase sideband, oh, I'm envious. But congratulations. I'll say thank you very much again for watching. 73s to everybody. Please, again, watch some of the other videos I've done in the past. You may find some interesting material in them. That's it for now. This has been Enthusiastic Steve. Till the next time, thank you for watching.